October 24th, 1929, a Thursday. Wall Street traders watched in horror as fortunes evaporated in minutes. September 15th, 2008, a Monday. The same look of horror, the same disbelief. But here's what will keep you awake at night. They saw it coming. Both times. And they ignored the exact same warnings. Today, you're going to discover something Wall Street doesn't want you to know. A pattern so precise, so predictable, that once you see it, you'll never look at the market the same way again. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll understand why crashes aren't accidents. They're human nature on repeat. Let me take you back to 1928. The phrase you heard everywhere? We've entered a new era? Sound familiar? Americans were obsessed with the stock market. Shoeshine boys gave stock tips. Teachers quit to become day traders. A chauffeur turned $1,000 into $2 million in months. The radio, cutting-edge technology, connected the nation for the first time. Information moves instantly now, they said. The old rules don't apply. Now jump to 2006. The phrase you heard everywhere? This time it's different. Americans were obsessed with real estate. Waiters owned 3 investment properties. Teachers quit to flip houses. A stripper in Florida, true story, owned 5 condos and a boat. The internet, cutting-edge technology, connected the world instantly. Information moves at the speed of light now, they said. The old rules don't apply. See the pattern yet? No? Good, because neither they. And that's exactly where our story begins. Here's a psychology experiment for you. In 1928, economist Irving Fisher, basically the Elon Musk of his day, declared, stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. 9 days later, the market crashed. In 2007, Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Federal Reserve, testified, the impact on the broader economy and financial markets of the problems in the subprime market seems likely to be contained. 18 months later, Lehman Brothers collapsed, and the global economy nearly followed. But here's the psychological trick both eras share, something called normalcy bias. Your brain is wired to believe tomorrow will be like today. When everyone around you is getting rich, your brain whispers, "You're the fool if you're not in on this." Let me show you how identical this really was. In the 1920s, you could buy stocks with just 10% down. It was called buying on margin. You'd put in $1,000 and control $10,000 worth of stock. When prices went up 20%, you didn't make 20%, you made 200%. Magic, right? Until prices went down. In the 2000s, you could buy a house with 0% down. It was called a ninja loan. No income, no job, no problem. You'd put in nothing and control a $400,000 asset. When prices went up 20%, you didn't make 20%, you made infinite returns. You risked nothing and gained everything. Until prices went down. Same lever, same delusion. 79 years apart. But wait, it gets darker. Now here's where it gets chilling. Both crashes had prophets. People who stood up and screamed warnings. And both times, they were laughed out of the room. In 1929, his name was Roger Babson, an economist. At a speech on September 5th, 7 weeks before the crash, he said, "Sooner or later, a crash is coming, and it may be terrific." The market dropped immediately. They called it the Babson break. But within days, the market recovered, and Babson was ridiculed as a fearmonger. A killjoy. Someone bitter that he was missing out on the boom. Does this sound familiar? In 2005, his name was Michael Burry, a hedge fund manager with Asperger's syndrome who spent his nights reading mortgage bond prospectuses, documents so boring they could be used as enhanced interrogation. He discovered something terrifying. The entire housing market was built on loans that would explode. He bet everything against the market. His investors called him crazy. They tried to pull their money out. They said he was throwing away their fortunes while everyone else got rich. Here's the psychology at work. It's called social proof. When everyone believes something, your brain assumes it must be true. To disagree feels like insanity. It feels like you're the one who's lost touch with reality. But here's the thing about profits. They're only respected after the disaster. Before it, they're pariahs. And here's why that matters to you right now. Listening to this. If you ever find yourself in a bubble, and trust me, you will, your brain will do everything it can to convince you the warnings are wrong. Because accepting the warnings means accepting you're about to lose everything. That's not a bug in human psychology. That's a feature, and it's what makes crashes inevitable. So what actually triggered these crashes? Here's where the story gets almost supernatural in its similarity. In 1929, the catalyst was simple. Banks started calling in margin loans. Remember those 10% down stock purchases? Banks suddenly wanted their money back. To pay the banks, people had to sell stocks. When they sold, prices dropped. When prices dropped, banks got nervous and called in more loans. More selling, lower prices, more panic. A death spiral. In 2008, the catalyst was simple. Banks started refusing to lend to each other. They realized everyone was holding toxic mortgage bonds, but they didn't know who had the most. So they stopped lending entirely. Without loans, companies couldn't make payroll. Without payroll, people couldn't pay mortgages. Without mortgage payments, more bonds went toxic, more panic. Banks collapsed. A death spiral, different mechanisms, identical psychology. Fear is contagious. And once it starts, it spreads faster than any disease. But here's the part that should terrify you. In both cases, the smart money knew it was coming. They just thought they could get out in time. In 1929, Joseph Kennedy, JFK's father, was a major stock speculator. Legend says he got out of the market right before the crash because his shoeshine boy gave him stock tips. When the shoeshine boy was in the market, Kennedy knew it had gone too far. In 2008, Goldman Sachs was selling mortgage bonds to clients while simultaneously betting against those same bonds. They knew the bonds were garbage. They sold them anyway. They just assumed they'd get out before everyone else. Here's the cruel truth about crashes. Everyone thinks they'll see the exit. Everyone thinks they're faster than the crowd. But exits only work when nobody's using them. When everyone runs for the door at once, people die in a stampede. October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday. The stock market lost 12% of its value in a single day. Fortunes that took decades to build vanished in hours. By the time the dust settled in 1932, the market had lost 89% of its value. 89%. Imagine your retirement account. Now imagine it's worth 11 cents on the dollar. That's not a crash. That's an annihilation. September 15, 2008, Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy. $800 billion in debt. The largest bankruptcy in American history. The stock market lost 40% of its value in weeks. The global economy seized up like an engine without oil. Countries that had nothing to do with American mortgages watched their economies collapse. But here's what the history books don't tell you. The real damage wasn't the money, it was the psychology. In 1929, successful businessmen, men who had built empires, jumped out of windows. Literally. There are documented cases of suicides on Wall Street the day of the crash. Why? Because in a single day, they went from being geniuses to being fools. From masters of the universe to cautionary tales. The shame was unbearable. In 2008, families who'd been homeowners for generations lost everything. A man in Los Angeles shot his entire family before killing himself. He left a note. "I'm sorry. We're going to lose the house." They found the foreclosure notice on his kitchen table. This is what crashes really do. They don't just destroy wealth. They destroy identity. When your entire self-worth is tied to your net worth and your net worth goes to zero, who are you? But here's the darkest parallel. In both crashes, the people who suffered most weren't the ones who caused it. The 1920s stock bubble was driven by wealthy speculators and banks. But when it crashed, who suffered? Factory workers, farmers, secretaries. People who'd never owned a single share of stock watched their jobs disappear. The unemployment rate hit 25%. 1 in 4 Americans couldn't find work. Families lived in shanty towns called Hoovervilles, named mockingly after President Hoover. Children went hungry while grain rotted in silos because farmers couldn't afford to harvest it. The 2000s housing bubble was driven by Wall Street bankers and mortgage brokers. But when it crashed, who suffered? Teachers, nurses, construction workers. People who just wanted to own a home watched their life savings evaporate. The unemployment rate hit 10%. Millions lost their homes. Families lived in their cars. People with college degrees applied for jobs at McDonald's and were turned away because they were overqualified. Here's the psychology of this. It's called moral hazard. When you know someone else will pay for your mistakes, you take bigger risks. The banks in 1929 knew the Federal Reserve would bail them out. The banks in 2008 knew the government would bail them out. They were right both times. But the factory worker, the nurse, they had no one to bail them out. They took the fall for other people's greed. And here's the really sick part. Many of them blame themselves. I should have been smarter. I should have saved more. I should have seen it coming. That's not just wrong. That's the final insult. Making the victims believe they deserved it. After 1929, it took 25 years for the stock market to recover to its pre-crash peak. 25 years. An entire generation lived their whole adult lives in the shadow of that crash. They never trusted banks again. They never trusted the stock market again. They saved every penny. They reused everything. They became the generation we'd later call paranoid and cheap, never understanding they'd been traumatized. After 2008, it took 6 years for the stock market to recover. Much faster, right? But here's what didn't recover. Trust. An entire generation millennials watched their parents lose everything. They watched the banks get bailed out while their families got evicted. They entered the job market in the worst economy since the Great Depression, and they've never forgotten. Today, millennials don't trust banks. They don't trust Wall Street. They don't trust the system. And can you blame them? They watch the same people who caused the crash get bonuses while their parents got foreclosure notices. But here's the terrifying question. Did we learn anything? After 1929, we created regulations. The SEC, the FDIC, Glass-Steagall, laws designed to prevent it from happening again. And for 70 years it didn't. After 2008, we created regulations. Dodd-Frank, stress tests, new oversight, laws designed to prevent it from happening again. But here's what history teaches us. Humans don't change, we just forget. Right now, in 2025, we're seeing the same patterns. Different names, different technologies, but the same psychology, the same greed, the same normalcy bias, the same belief that this time it's different. So why am I telling you this? Why does any of this matter? Because it's going to happen again. Not might, will. The question isn't if, it's when. And the uncomfortable truth is, you're going to be part of it. Maybe you're already in the bubble right now and don't know it. Maybe it's crypto. Maybe it's AI stocks. Maybe it's something that doesn't exist yet. But somewhere, right now, people are saying, this time it's different. They're saying the old rules don't apply. They're getting rich while cautious people watch from the sidelines. And your brain is screaming at you to join them. Here's what you need to understand. The crush doesn't happen when things look bad. It happens when things look best. In 1929, the economy was booming. Unemployment was low. Optimism was high. In 2008, housing prices had never been higher. Everyone was making money. The future looked bright. That's when the trap springs. So what do? How do you protect yourself from a pattern that's been repeating for centuries? First, understand that you're not rational. Neither am I, neither is anyone. We're all running on the same flawed software that caused both crashes. Recognizing that is the first step. Second, when everyone around you is getting rich on something you don't understand, that's not a signal to jump in. That's a signal to run away. The shoeshine boy giving stock tips, the stripper owning 5 condos. These aren't opportunities. They're sirens warning of rocks ahead. Third, remember that markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. Just because you spot a bubble doesn't mean it'll pop tomorrow. Michael Burry was right in 2005, but he nearly went bankrupt waiting until 2008. Being right early is the same as being wrong. And fourth, the most important lesson. When the crash comes, and it will come, the people who caused it will be fine. They'll get bailouts. They'll get bonuses. They'll write books about their genius. It's you, the ordinary person, who'll pay the price. So don't put yourself in a position where their mistakes destroy your life. 2 crashes, 79 years apart. Same script, same psychology, same outcome. The names changed. The technology changed. But human nature? That stayed exactly the same. Our greed, our fear, our desperate need to believe we're special, that we figured out what everyone else missed, that this time really is different. It never is. The market crashed in 1929 because people believed they'd found a way to get rich without risk. The market crashed in 2008 because people believed they'd found a way to get rich without risk. And when the next crash comes, it'll be because people believe they'd found a way to get rich without risk. Einstein supposedly said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. By that definition, the market isn't just insane. It's predictably, reliably, cyclically insane. The question is, now that you know the pattern, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you be the person who sees the warning signs and protects yourself? Or will you be the person who says this time it is different and learns the hard way that it never is? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, if you listen carefully, you can hear the rhyme beginning again. The question is, are you listening?